Hello. Hey everybody, it's me, Chief Josheola. Thank you as always to TYT Sports. We're here for another installment of a great WWE Top 10 list. Today we're doing the Top 10 WWE Feuds of all time. So we had three criteria when we were coming up with this list. Number one, the feud has to be meaningful. These have to be feuds that have some kind of echoes and reverberations all throughout the WWE. Something that wasn't just one guy facing another guy. They had to mean something. Number two, they had to be just involving WWE stars. There's been a lot of great feuds over the years with other guys like Masato Tanaka and Mike Awesome, Jerry Lynn and RVD, but I wanted to stick with WWE wrestlers, either guys who ended up in the WWE anyway. And also, finally, did not want to use the same wrestler twice. This is what made this list especially difficult, but a lot of fun to try to figure out how can I narrow things down. So without further ado, let's see if you agree with my list. Number 10. Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero. Now, this is a feud that carried over from the WCW to the WWE. These men had faced each other in WCW. They wanted to continue their feud, but they wanted to take it to the next level. So they figured, how could they do that? They developed this complicated storyline where Eddie Guerrero actually claimed to be Rey Mysterio's son's dad, his son Dominic. So they brought their wives in. There was matches for paternity and all this other stuff. And whether or not you want to think that the storyline itself was kind of dumb, you can't deny that the matches they had were phenomenal. If that feud is known for as short as it may have been, this next feud is known for how long it's been going on. And number 9 is John Cena versus Randy Orton. Now, both of these men came into the company in 2002, and they were destined to go to the top. One of them, in Randy Orton, was the son of a famous wrestler, so everybody thought, well, he's going to be the next superstar. John Cena was this really talented, good-looking young guy who's a bodybuilder and all this stuff. Well, he's got apparently all of the chops to make it in this business, but they just took different paths. A few years later, they would ended up fighting each other, and then they went back and forth, and had Hell in the Cell matches. They had an Iron Man match. There was matches involving handcuffs, things like that. They just always seemed to be butting heads with each other. John Cena became the baby face of the company, sort of the darling of the brand, and Randy Orton became the Viper, one of the most beloved heels that the WWE has. And they would both get the title, lose the title, get the title, lose the title. And right now, unfortunately, both men are out, but I guarantee next year when they both return, they will be facing each other again for the title one way or another. Number 8, this is the one that's a little bit of an exception because these men never faced each other in a WWE ring, despite the fact that both of them were inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, so they did end their careers with the WWE, and that is Ric Flair versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. These men, while they had a lot of matches over the years, they are most known for 3 significant matches in 1989 that a lot of wrestling historians, people who are fans of the golden era of wrestling and stuff like that, they say that these 3 matches were some of the greatest televised matches in history. One of them was actually pitted against WrestleMania 5, and while the ratings were absolutely terrible because they were going up against WrestleMania 5, the people who actually saw the match said it was phenomenal. These are 2 men who were known for their technical wrestling skills, known for their showmanship, known for that era of wrestling. Number 7, no way I could leave these 2 off this list, and that's Trish versus Lita. You want to talk about 2 wrestlers, not just women, wrestlers who redefined not their gender roles and just the role of what can be done in the ring, in and out of the ring. These women took a lot of bumps that you don't see very much today. They were phenomenal, not just on their own, but when they were part of tag teams and stables and things like that. Before them, women were a little more than arm candy. Okay, sometimes you would have them as managers and they do use dirty, underhanded tricks to get the better of somebody. But then when Trish and Lita came along, they showed that women can be beautiful and they can be tough. They can be smart. They can be athletic. They changed the game for women's wrestling, and they're the ones who paved the way for the current crop of divas. And the respect was shown to them by allowing them to headline a Raw, WWE's flagship show in 2004. The WWE had so much confidence in them, they headlined the show, and that match is regarded as one of the best women's matches in history and is used in the NXT training facility for future up-and-coming divas to show them this is what you should aspire to be. This is the kind of match you should aspire to have every single time, and with good reason. Number 6, absolutely have to have these guys. Edge and Christian versus the Hardys versus the Dudleys. They were the ones who created the TLC, the concept of a TLC match in the WWE. An entire pay-per-view was named for these guys. Now, while TLC matches exist and have existed in other promotions, the actual name TLC is trademarked by the WWE, and it was because of what these men did, which ironically, they never competed in an actual TLC pay-per-view, but they had several matches where they employed their favorite weapons of choice that just showcased what a wrestler can go through physically, what they're able to do with their high-flying skills, and just how entertaining a match can be when you get three guys with similar skill sets who are willing to put their bodies on the line and sacrifice everything for it. Number 5, The Rock and Triple H. Two men who are so dedicated to the business and who had such great matches against each other in the late 90s. Triple H represented a little bit of an older crowd coming in since he had been with the company a little bit longer than The Rock. The Rock was this fresh-faced new guy coming up. And I think there was a little bit of jealousy involved in Triple H when he saw how successful and how important The Rock was becoming in the business. And so they were having a lot of feuds going back and forth. But that's what makes a feud great, is two guys who can go up against each other, stand toe-to-toe with each other, and more importantly that, they're committed to the business. The business is, at the end of the day, it's entertaining us. It's giving us a good show. And both The Rock and Triple H are absolutely 100% committed to this. And you can watch their matches from the 90s when they started out in 98, and it led to one of the best ladder matches in history, was with these two men. You had Triple H being with Degeneration X, and so The Rock started up with Mankind and started the Rock and Sock connection, which is almost a complete mockery of that. But they were such a great juxtaposition. They had such a great time feeding off of each other, and that positive energy translated to us as the fans, and we benefited from that. Number 4, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. Of course. All I have to do is say Montreal Screwjob, and that can define this feud. Although it was a little bit more than that. I mean, the Montreal Screwjob was in '97. Their feud goes back a few years prior to that. Both amazing technical wrestlers, both beloved by their fan bases, things like that. They had an Iron Man match at WrestleMania 12. Iron Man matches are a certain sign of respect from the company, because to wrestle for 60 minutes, the WWE has to have a certain amount of trust in you that you're going to be able to maintain people's attention for that long. And so when they put two people in an Iron Man match, it's almost a stamp of approval saying you have arrived to a certain level where we feel you can carry a match for that long. And it ends up being a fantastic match because you have two great workers. And then of course the Montreal Screwjob, arguably the most infamous match and infamous ending in professional wrestling history. Something that broke the barriers between what was real and what wasn't real. And even to this day, people still talk about it and still use it. Up until just a few years ago, Bret Hart had refused to even acknowledge Shawn Michaels' apology. He since his tempers have cooled down a little bit, and he says, hey, I'm getting older, I don't want to carry this stuff around, and maybe one day we'll reconcile. And he's reconciled with the company, and so time heals all wounds. But still, the Montreal Screwjob, to this day, an epic confrontation, and that's where it culminated. Into the top 3. Number 3, have to put these guys on there, of course. The Undertaker versus Kane. Back in a time when kayfabe was still maintained, storylines were still passed off as real. The Undertaker was still the dead man. His burned up brother, Kane, was still this guy wearing a mask, and Undertaker refused to fight his brother because he didn't want to go against his family. And they finally had some matches against each other. And this started in 97, the heyday of the WWE and the Monday Night Wars, when they're competing against WCW for supremacy of your television viewing habits. They teamed up, they betrayed each other, and they had this constant back and forth. They would team up as the Brothers of Destruction, become a very, very dominant tag team. While they didn't win as many titles as Edge and Christian did, they were still dominant simply because of who they were. I mean, these men were both legends by the time they became a tag team. So to watch these two guys team up against everybody else, it was more the phenomenon of watching them together in the ring because they're just so big and so strong. Number 2, WrestleMania 5 main event. You know that one? Of course you do. Hulk Hogan versus Randy Savage. The immortal Hulk Hogan versus Randy Savage. For a lot of people, this is their number 1. Not just because of the quality of their matches, but because of who's involved. You have Hulk Hogan, probably the most recognizable name and face in all of professional wrestling. And then Randy Savage, the consummate professional, the guy whose ego and whose character was so out of this world. He was so entertaining. But what people may not know was that he was a professional. He was a perfectionist. This guy would go over their matches over and over again in their rehearsals. He wanted every match to be perfect. He absolutely was one of the hardest working men in wrestling, and plenty of wrestlers will say that about the man who were actually lucky enough to wrestle with him. What was great about this feud was that it was something that a lot of men, probably every man who's ever been in a relationship, can relate to. Their relationship as the Mega Powers broke up because of jealousy. Macho Man was jealous of Hulk Hogan's relationship with Miss Elizabeth. He thought they were getting a little too chummy, so they ended up having a confrontation about it, and they fought each other, had some great matches, and then after that, Savage went off, got a new manager, got Sensational Sherry, and Hulk Hogan went off and did his whole thing. They would have a rematch at the main event, but what was more important was this match really not only solidified Hulk Hogan's status as the Immortal, as the Babe Ruth of the WWE, but it also gave legitimacy to Macho Man Randy Savage. It showed people he belonged up there. When you talk about a Mount Rushmore of wrestlers, absolutely he would be up there with Hulk Hogan, simply because he could compete with him inside the ring, outside the ring, on the mic, off the mic, all that kind of stuff. And now for the number one. You have to have guessed the number one by now, because these are two very important men in the entire history of this business who I haven't mentioned yet. Can you take a guess? Of course you can. Vince McMahon versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. How could this not be the number one feud in all of professional wrestling? It has to be. Blue collar versus white collar, boss versus employee. This is the thing that dreams are made of. If you've ever had a boss, you've probably had the dreams of giving him the middle finger, kicking him in the stomach, and then giving him more middle fingers as everybody cheered, drinking a beer, pouring it on him, telling him, F you, I'm going to do what I want. Everybody has had that dream, and Stone Cold got to live it. But what made the feud great was that it was never one-sided. Stone Cold didn't always win, and Vince McMahon didn't always win. That's what makes a feud great. A feud has to go back and forth. It has to have some give and take. To me, the Austin McMahon feud was the Citibank of the WWE. It was simply too big to fail. Vince McMahon was the boss. He was the man who was in charge of this whole thing. And Stone Cold Steve Austin was the epitome of the Attitude Era. He was the guy who defined Raw is War. He was the one who gave people hope that, you know what, at the end of the day, it's going to be okay, because I can watch Stone Cold Steve Austin give the big middle finger and F you to my boss, and I can live vicariously through his actions, and he gets to do all the things I can't do. And everyone can relate to that. Everybody loves it. Every working class guy loves Stone Cold Steve Austin, and with good reason. He's an amazing performer, and Vince, to his credit, did an amazing job as the boss everyone loves to hate, and he still does that to this day. So that's all I got. If you have comments, if you agree or disagree, please put your comments in the section below. I'd love to hear them. We always do. As always, thanks again to TYT Sports. You can follow me at ChiefJosheola on Twitter. Please keep your comments coming. I'd love to keep making more of these videos. Let TYT Sports know, and we'll get more. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.